everybody, and welcome to another of our staff town halls. It's great to have you with us today. I'm Hallie Nicholson, HR Strategic Communication and Engagement Manager, and I'll be your moderator for today's town hall. We've got a great group of panelists on hand to provide some updates on our operations during the COVID-19 pandemic and to answer the questions that you submitted before the event during your registration and questions that you're submitting live today. So make sure to use the Q&A box below and submit your questions. We've got folks answering questions both on camera later on in our presentation and throughout, some folks behind the scenes. So lots of folks on hand to answer your questions. Due to time limitations, we won't be able to get to all your questions, but we will log the questions as they come in and post answers on the Return to Learn website. So this webinar has live closed captioning that's available in two ways. First, you can click on the closed caption button at the bottom of your closed caption button at the bottom of your screen and select show subtitles, or you can click the link that is going to be pasted into the chat. So with that, I'd like to welcome Chancellor Pradeep Khosla to get us started with some welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Hallie, and good afternoon and welcome everybody. The recent piece of good news that we learned very recently is that more than 2 million San Diego County residents are fully vaccinated. This brings us to nearly like 67% or so. Not quite herd immunity, but pretty close. We're getting there. We're getting there really fast. So we're making steady progress on this. We're also making steady progress on this incremental return to campus strategy and our operations. Our VCs are finalizing their plans as we speak and finalizing the timing for the units and who's going to come back when. Our supervisors are in contact and will be in contact with their staff. And we continue to review policies and protocols to ensure that everybody comes back here safely. UCOP at the same time is also finalizing details on a system-wide vaccine mandate. And I think details should be forthcoming sometime in mid-July. But for now, what we know is that all faculty, staff, and students who will be accessing UC facility will have a mandate that they must be vaccinated against COVID-19. And all staff, faculty, and students are also expected to comply with this mandate about 2 weeks prior to the start of this fall quarter. So this timeline also applies to our essential workers who are already working on campus. As from me personally, I'm encouraging each and every one of you to get vaccinated. This would make our transition to campus and transition to working in person very simple and seamless. And if you need an appointment, there are price appointments available in the Price Center and other UC San Diego health locations. And by the way, also many pharmacies across in the area are offering vaccinations. Let me just say a thank you to each and every one of you for participating in the Staff at Work survey and also for participating in IdeaWave. The inputs and your ideas that you've given have made a really big difference, and they're helping us think through how we want to bring everybody back to campus. I can tell you one thing, that when we come back to campus, the transition to work and working to campus, you will all be fully supported. And that's the direction I've given to all the VCs, and in turn from them to the directors and so on and so forth. Finally, let me just say a big thank you. It's been a long 16, 17 months. Could not have done this without you. And because of you, we are a better place. We are a stronger place. So I look forward to seeing you all on campus, and back to you, Hallie.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Khosla. I'd now like to introduce my colleague and our Chief Human Resources Officer, Nancy Resnik, the host of our town hall today, to share some remarks. So Nancy, take it away.
Thank you so much, Hallie, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm your Chief Human Resources Officer, and I'm so happy to welcome you all to this town hall. We had over 1,600 people register, which is super exciting. And so I really appreciate you coming to join us. We have lots and lots of great information to share on a variety of topics, as you know. And one of those topics is about our return to campus. And we heard a little bit about that from our Chancellor. First, before we talk about that, as always, I want to thank and acknowledge the staff who have worked on campus every single day since the beginning of the pandemic, who have kept our campus going and without whom we could not function. Their work is invaluable to UC San Diego. And for other staff, those of us who move to remote work, we know that there are many, many questions, and the issue of return to campus is very top of mind for many of us. So we want to spend a bit of time in the staff town hall today sharing information with you. And I will tell you that Human Resources is continuing to lead conversations around resources and processes to help establish the framework for the vice chancellors and to support the vice chancellors in planning for their operations as we head closer to September 1st. Many of those resources are available online, and they've just been added to the chat. So take a look, please take a look if you're interested, and you'll find information around our flexible work policy, our draft policy language, as well as what we're calling the return to campus position review, which is guidance for reviewing positions within a department in order to determine suitability for potential flexible work arrangements. Based on operational needs and a variety of differences across the portfolios, our vice chancellors right now are in different stages of their planning process. And I know, and we have heard loud and clear, and we do understand how important it is and how eager you are to learn details around the return to campus arrangements that will apply to you and get a sense of what the fall and beyond will look like for you. So if you and your supervisor have not yet had an opportunity to have this conversation, please be patient, and please know that our campus leaders are working very hard to do this complex work very thoughtfully and strategically. And again, as a reminder, you should remember as well that managers will provide 30 days notice of changes to current work arrangements, and that's to allow staff to make all the plans that are needed to make a smooth transition. So in our return to campus planning, you know, one of the things we've recognized is how varied our operational needs and service delivery models are across the many ways we work in our complex institution. And we've recognized the importance of empowering our managers and supervisors to make decisions about flexible work arrangements at the local level. Today, we'll hear more from my colleague in HR, Terry Winbush, about some trainings that are designed specifically to support managers and supervisors in this process. We also want to share another way in which Human Resources is supporting our staff community through the return to campus process, and that is to have weekly transitioning the workplace discussion space. And that's facilitated through FSAP, the Faculty and Staff Assistance Program. We recognize that this is a time of incredible change and transition. It's a very critical moment for many of us, and there are many things to think about. And in this time, I encourage you to be kind to yourself, be kind to your colleagues, and to take advantage of opportunities like this weekly discussion space that will help you focus on the process and on your own well-being. We want to also continue our dialogue as a staff community. So we'll be sharing really important information obtained through the Reimagining the Workplace survey, as well as the Idea Wave campaign. And I want to echo our Chancellor in thanking you for your participation in this process. We had very strong participation, and it is very important. And I want to thank each of you who took the time to contribute your thoughts and ideas, which are very important to us in this process. One more thing before we get started. We've said throughout these staff town halls that we want to acknowledge how quickly things can change, and we've promised that we will provide updates as soon as we have more information about topics of interest. So I'm very pleased to share an update with all of you, which is something we actually learned yesterday, which is that we have approval to implement the STAR Award program for the 21-22 fiscal year. The STAR Award program is a tool that is used to recognize exceptional contributions for some categories of employees. And these financial awards had been placed on hold as part of our steps around the financial response that was needed in the pandemic. So it's very exciting to share with you that the program has been approved for the coming fiscal year. So with that, welcome again. Thank you again, and let's get started.
Great, thank you, Nancy. So let's get started with our updates. And I know something that's on everybody's mind is what's the state of the pandemic, what's going on with the vaccines. So I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Dr. Angela Sosha, Interim Director of Student Health and Wellbeing, to give us an update on COVID, the vaccine, and how things are looking in that category. So take it away, Angela.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. And I have a lot of encouraging news, but a little bit of words of caution. So we're trying to paint a realistic picture of a very complex situation with this rather smart virus. We are still facing a global situation, and the case counts go up every day, as unfortunately do the death rates, the death counts. Overall, the US is doing a lot better, as you see. Things have continued to come down over the course of the last few weeks. San Diego also looks very good with relatively few cases each day. I just realized I forgot to change. That is actually on the right. That is the San Diego County death rate total. LA County's, unfortunately, is substantially larger. Next slide. And unfortunately, we are seeing deaths here and there continue. California has been doing really well. The number of new cases has been relatively stable over the last few weeks. So we've not seen any clear impact of the opening up. There is some caution though because of the Delta variant, and I'll be speaking to that a little bit later. Next slide. So what's going on campus? Reminding everybody, if you're fully vaccinated, please do the daily symptom screener. If you have any symptoms, please test. We do see occasionally individuals who are fully vaccinated acquire the virus and develop symptoms or not develop symptoms, and they may shed virus at a level that could infect others who are vulnerable or unvaccinated. So please, if you have symptoms, test. If there's a wastewater signal in your building, and even if you're vaccinated, please test, but you do not need to do the weekly asymptomatic testing. Unvaccinated individuals, daily symptom screener, symptom testing, respond to wastewater messaging, and please test weekly if you are coming onto campus, even if you don't have symptoms. So that is the one behavior we want you to make sure you're still doing if you're unvaccinated. And if you're not coming onto campus for work or activities, you can still take advantage of the testing. At no charge. Our vending machines are still all active. We have a fewer in some of the undergrad residential areas because they've been not currently active while the students are not living in those buildings. But everywhere there are students on campus, as well as all the other areas, the vending machines are open and you can see those sites on your app. You do have to swipe to get your card using your campus ID. Remember to capture the barcode on the sample so we can identify it to you. It looks like $1 on, but that dollar comes right off, so no cost to you. Price Center has provider administered COVID testing as well. If you're not comfortable with the self-testing, you prefer to have someone else do it for you, or you want to learn how to do self-administered testing, please go to the Price Center. We're open Monday through Saturday, closed on Sunday. With the holiday coming up, we will be closed on the 5th of July as well. We offer vaccination for all of our employees, including our students, including students who haven't yet arrived, our incoming students, or students from the other UC campuses. Vaccinations are Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. These are all by appointment only. Next slide. So this tricky virus, I want to spend just a little bit, remind everybody that there is the virus and then the protein covering it. We call the spike protein. This protein is very important for a couple of reasons. That protein is how it attaches to our receptors on our cells. So changes in that protein often are where the variants are actually occurring. And those changes then may make the transmission of the virus more effective. So what the virus wants to do is keep replicating. So it promotes changes that makes it more transmissible and keeps it surviving. So this spike protein is very important. Next picture, next slide. Okay, so a lot of the variants are changes in the spike protein. And because those changes allow the virus to be more effective in latching onto our cells, it increases transmissibility, and it also can increase sometimes disease severity, more hospitalizations and more deaths. So these changes, the variants that you're hearing about, and now they have some new names. So the British strain is now called Alpha. And they got the names partly because where they originated. So we have Beta, Gamma, and the newest one, remember there was a big spike in India, and that strain that resulted in very high rates of transmission and quite a bit of serious illness and death was the Delta strain. That strain is moving quickly around the globe, and this is one of our challenges. We know it's quite active in Britain, and there's a little bit of activity in California as well. We are watching this strain particularly carefully because of its high transmissibility. The other part about these changes is many of our vaccinations are targeted to on the spike protein itself. And so if there are changes, they may reduce the effectiveness of our vaccines. And we also use certain signals from the virus, including the protein, to pick up infections. And so our tests are based on actual makeup, they're biochemical tests, PCR tests. If you do a change so we can't see the signal anymore because the variant has taken away the signal, we could result in some challenges with diagnosis as well. So the variations are a particularly important part of this puzzle to keep an eye on. Next picture, next slide. So in San Diego, and I'm just sharing this with you, but I want you to realize this is older information. There is sequencing going on to know which variants are going and circulating in San Diego, but it takes time. The sample has to be collected, confirm that it's got virus, and then the sequencing has to occur, and then the publication. So this is delayed information. And so while it shows only 16 cases of last week, that number is an underestimate of what may actually be occurring now. We know that the British or the UK variant Alpha was taking over and was replacing the common variant even a few weeks ago, months ago. So the likelihood is once the variant starts, if it is a very effective variant in transmission, it will take over and become the predominant strain that you're seeing in a community, which is why this vaccination becomes so critical, because vaccination dramatically drops the problem in terms of risk of infection. Next slide. So we have 3 major vaccines in the US. They are not yet FDA approved. We fully expect that to happen very soon. 2 of them are messenger RNA, and that's the predominant one we have seen in this country, and certainly that we have been giving within the health system at REMAC, at the Price Center, at Petco. And then there has been a little bit of the J&J, which is the viral vector vaccine. And I'll talk a little bit about both of these in a second. Let's keep going. So those are the 3 in the US. For our international community, there are other vaccines that are being given. And when the mandate goes through, we will accept other vaccines that if they are WHO approved vaccines. There may be recommendations for supplemental boosters or alternative vaccination with some of these what appear to be significantly less effective vaccines that are being distributed around the world. It's not that there's no effect, they're not as effective as the very effective messenger RNA vaccines. Next slide. There's been a lot of concern a little bit about the messenger RNA and the thoughts that maybe, is this changing your DNA? Is this going to be a permanent problem? Well, we'll go back a little bit to the biology. So DNA, all of it, it is the molecules in our body, which provides the coding through transcription, which allows our body to make proteins. It is our core makeup. So it goes from those DNA strands, they're transcribed to make pieces of messenger RNA. The messenger RNA is read to make the proteins. So the way the Pfizer virus, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines work is it tricks our body a little bit. It sends in a messenger RNA, which has been made, that is the vaccine. It's not the one that we naturally produce. And it tells our body to make a piece of the viral protein spike, right? Spike protein. It's not the virus. It's a piece, it's a fragment. It won't make you sick per se, but our body sees it as a foreign protein. So it has a reaction. That's why you get some of the symptoms. The benefit is by building those symptoms, that reaction, that's the antibody, that's the immune response. If you are exposed to the real spike protein attached to the real virus, your body will react to neutralize it. So it's very important. It's not changing your basic DNA, but it is giving you an antibody response in case you see the natural spike protein. So I hope that helps. Also, if you didn't develop symptoms, that doesn't mean you didn't make antibody. If you developed a lot of symptoms, that didn't mean you made a lot of antibody. There's no direct correlation. So don't worry if you didn't have symptoms or you had a lot of symptoms, think, well, I must have got super protection. It doesn't quite work that way. Next slide. So there's been a little recent concern about the messenger RNA viruses that some myocarditis, some recent cases, relatively small in number compared to the 30 million doses of messenger RNA that have been distributed, a little over 1,000 cases. It seems to be a short-lived myocarditis, inflammation, cardiac heart inflammation that has been in younger individuals. It is recovered and it's not resulted in deaths. And so we're not quite understanding all of it, but it's not a reason not to get the vaccine. So, because remember, there are many more serious and not always recoverable complications from the viral infection itself. So there is an awareness of this. People are keeping an eye on it, but it does look to be self-limited and it's not a reason not to get the vaccine. Next slide. The other complication has been with the adenoviruses, the J&J. There were some clotting complications. If you remember, the vaccine was introduced and then temporarily held in the US and then reintroduced. As people work to understand this very rare complication that seemed to be a little more common in women, not only women, but more common there, people have learned to recognize this complication, make an early diagnosis, and actually to be able to treat for it. So we're much better prepared to handle this complication. Again, small risk, very small risk associated with the J&J vaccine, and an ability to manage it and detect it if should you have that rare complication. So again, will not hesitate to get this vaccine as well. Next slide. So how are these holding up in terms of protecting against these various strains, these variants? And you'll see the messenger RNA vaccines, the Pfizer and the Moderna, are doing a great job. They're very, very effective. The effectiveness with the J&J, okay, has been a little bit less effective. And so that's something to keep in mind, and we're watching it very closely. Next slide. So as the Chancellor mentioned, these are numbers that I think I pulled this on Sunday morning, looking really great. For the individuals over the age of 12, San Diego is making great progress. So sometimes you'll see the entire population, sometimes you'll see the eligible population. So the percentages may look a little different, but really good progress we're making in San Diego, with 2/3 of the individuals over the age of 12 now being fully vaccinated. That doesn't mean we want to slow down, and there's no magic number. I think it's important to realize as long as there are susceptible individuals around, not only are they at risk of being infected and complications, there's risk of the virus mutating more and other variants develop. So we want to push those numbers as high as possible. With that, we stamp down illness and we stamp down the virus's ability to replicate and create a new variation. Variant. Next slide. So why should you be vaccinated? The evidence is very strong that the vaccines are substantially safer than getting COVID itself. It will prevent you even if you are one of the individuals, and there is a small percent, all of us who are vaccinated have to realize this. It is not 100% bulletproof armor. There's a couple percent chance you will acquire the infection, but you will not become severely ill. You will not end up in an ICU on a ventilator. You will not die. Certainly if you're a healthy individual. There have been rare cases of deaths in vaccinated individuals who have underlying other health conditions. We have to realize people die when they have complex medical conditions, and then getting this infection is the last little bit their body doesn't have the reserve to fight it. But for most folks, this is going to keep you out of trouble, unlike the natural virus, where you can be very healthy and still end up in an ICU or potentially die. They also reduce the chance that you're going to transmit this virus to others who are vulnerable, whose bodies don't respond to the vaccine because they're immunocompromised. For a variety of reasons, you'll take care of other folks. And again, you're going to stop this virus from replicating. There are things you can do if you're vaccinated: eat in an indoor restaurant, go to the gym, travel on plane and cruise, things like this. We are working very carefully on the campus recommendations, and we'll talk a little bit more as this goes on. We are working to keep the campus as safe as possible, monitoring all of this activity in terms of our campus policies. Next slide. And I think the other thing that's coming up, will there be a need for booster shots? We think that it's likely there will be, because often with vaccines, you need booster shots. Remember, your Tdap, your tetanus, you periodically have to get a booster shot. So boosters are very common with viral vaccines. Okay, viruses change, and therefore we do updates. That's part of the reason why you get an annual flu shot. So specifically for COVID, though, there's some question as to whether we will need vaccination or recommend an alternate vaccine for folks that are having some of the less effective international vaccines. Some, we're keeping an eye on whether there would be a recommendation for J&J vaccine. That is not there now, but we're keeping an eye on it. What I will share, and be very comfortable saying is that we're going to stay on top of this, and we will make vaccines available to the campus community based on booster recommendations, vaccine recommendations as they're forthcoming. We've kept all of our infrastructure in place to be able to take care of you. And now I think it's Terry will be up, and I'll be available for questions.
Great, thank you very much, Angela. So as you said, next we're going to hear from Senior Director of Labor Relations and Employee Relations, Terry Winbush, about our return to campus. So Terry, take it away.
Thank you, Hallie. So I know there have been a lot of questions from you all about when are our masking and distancing guidelines going to change. Please be patient. I know that some of you have seen the OSHA guidelines that went into effect on June 18th. And there are certain things that we as an employer have to do before we can shift to relaxing those guidelines. Don't worry, we are fast and furiously meeting in the evenings, trying to put those things in place. Also keeping in mind the pending UC vaccine mandate. And so merging those two things together, we want to make sure that we do something that is seamless for you all and affording you the opportunity, if you are vaccinated, to have some of those relaxed guidelines. As of right now, because there are no changes, regardless of your vaccine status, you must mask indoors until we have those things in place. The exceptions are when you're eating and drinking, obviously. I'm not sure how you would otherwise do the eating and drinking bit, or if you're working alone in a closed room or office. So in all other cases, when you're indoors, you do need to be masked. But once we have those other precautions and requirements that OSHA has in place for employers in place, we will let you all know. I promise you, it will come hot off the presses so you all know when those restrictions are relaxed to an extent. Next slide. So as it relates to the return to campus efforts, over the next few months, as we're heading towards our fall readiness for September 1, just know that we are still working with all of your VCs and their VC project teams on having everything that you need and your managers and supervisors need in place to plan for your fall readiness. Each of the vice chancellors has designated a project team, and those teams are working within the vice chancellor's rubric for flexible work guidance and approach and all of those things. And so to the extent that your supervisor or manager is working on what the process will be for you, that will be in line with what your VC outlines or the EVC outlines for your portfolio, as it were, for those guidelines. But as Nancy noted earlier, staff will be given 30 days notice or more in some cases to know what their new work arrangement modality will be. And that will be for folks who are currently on site in person, who have been holding it down for this whole time. If you're going to have a change to your work schedule or something different about your work arrangement, you'll be given notice as well. And then for those of you who've been offsite or hybrid, to the extent that there will be a change for you, you'll be notified. But if you haven't heard anything yet, please don't worry. I know we're getting a lot of questions at the Return to Campus Help Desk. I haven't heard anything from my supervisor. Don't fret. It's not quite time. Most folks are working towards that September 1st date, and the people who are working towards an earlier date are giving advance notice that they're getting the 30 days notice as well. So just hang tight. We're working on it, and we'll get you that information, or your VCs or your department heads or your supervisors will get you that information very soon. Next slide. So the other thing that I wanted to make sure to remind you all of is that we are offering a series of trainings to make sure that managers and supervisors have the necessary tools in the planning around the return to campus and the team dynamics and engagement and all the things that we think of as potential struggles when working in a hybrid environment. They're not as difficult or as challenging as many people think. And so we have developed and put together a number of resources and trainings for supervisors and managers to make them aware and feel supported. So that's our Building Inclusive Teams and Trust training, where we provide information and guidance, as well as our Managing Remote and Hybrid Teams. Things as simple as having a shared calendar will sometimes break down barriers in a hybrid work arrangement model so that people kind of know where people are and how to access them. Do I need to just go over to their cubicle, or should I go over to their to my Zoom screen and give them a call that way, right? And then as it relates to the collaboration and communication tools for teams, this is for all employees. Everybody wants to know what are the different ways that we can work together from a technological standpoint to make all of this work for those of us who will be in person full time, for those of us who will be hybrid, and for those of us who will be offsite all the time or for the majority of time. Make sure to attend the collaboration and communication tools for teams. Now, if you've gone to sign up for the trainings and you're like, Terry, I tried, the classes were full. Well, don't fret. We are scheduling some additional sessions in August and going forward, so you will have an opportunity to attend the trainings and be supported throughout the entirety of the process. So hang in there. We're developing and putting more dates and resources up on that flexible work arrangements page as we speak. Next slide. Associated with all of these things and at the crux of all of the planning and everything that we're doing is really a focus on mental health and well-being. So please remember that we have our Triton's Flourish, which is a monthly virtual gathering on the third Thursday of each month. And the next sessions are noted on your screen. It's facilitated by the awesome William Youngblood within FSAP. And this is a time where there's a discussion around shared skills and strategies to maintain resilience while managing the many stressors of our daily lives, and then have a network of support and accountability within our Triton community so that we can all be there for each other. The other really important group that if you haven't attended, you should attend, and if you have, come again, is the Transitioning the Workplace group. Now, this is weekly on Tuesdays from 11 a.m. to 12 noon, and it's hosted by an FSAP counselor each week. And that's a place where people can come and talk through the different experiences and resources that they are working on as we enter this new phase of change and uncertainty. It is natural, normal, and appropriate to experience stress and anxiety and other heightened emotions during this time. So give yourself some grace. We are all having stress. We all have anxiety, and it's around a number of things. It could be as simple as not finding what you need when you go to the grocery store on your first adventure out into the world, to something as simple as my pencil is not sharpened and I need to write something, and you get more frustrated than you normally would. And that's because there's just so much going on that has been out of our control for so long. Give yourself a moment, take a breath, come to these sessions, talk it out with each other, be there for each other, give yourself some grace, give your colleagues some grace, try not to read negativity into those emails. Try not to read negativity in even interactions, because we are all doing the best that we can. And the best that we can do is to be there for each other and to give each other some space and grace as we're transitioning in all of these changes. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Hallie for our next presenter.
Wise words, Terry. Thank you very much. I'd now like to welcome our next presenters, Melanie Robertson, Senior Strategy and Innovation Analyst and Idea Wave Program Manager, and Angela Song, Senior Director of Organizational Assessments and Strategy, who will discuss with us some information about the results of our Reimagining the Workplace Idea Wave campaign and survey. So Melanie, you're up.
Thank you so much, Hallie. I'm going to briefly go over the high-level results and analysis from the Embracing a New Vision for Our Workplace campaign. The campaign was actually initially launched in the fall of 2020, and there was fairly low participation, and we think this was probably due to pandemic fears and quite a few uncertainties with what the winter and spring would bring in terms of the pandemic. So we ended up relaunching in spring and really started promoting the campaign alongside the Reimagining the Workplace survey. Next slide. So the good news is that with the relaunch and the amount of promotion that we did, the campaign received relatively high viewership. Every VC area was represented in some way in terms of their participation, and there was an extremely high comment to idea ratio. Generally, this indicates to us the quality of the submission, because what we're seeing is a dialogue occurring, and this is one of the cornerstones for engaging in a tool like this. However, we did hear anecdotal reports of staff members who were unwilling to participate due to fear of retaliation from supervisors they felt were unsupportive of remote work, which might explain why we didn't see what we might typically expect in terms of a conversion from viewership to then participation. Next slide. We had 5 idea categories that someone could choose from as they were submitting their idea or feedback. These were workspace, well-being, productivity, flexibility, and accountability. Most of our submitters selected flexibility and well-being as their chosen category for what they wanted to submit feedback on by more than half the submissions. This gives us an indication for what staff really wanted to focus on. Next slide. On this slide, we have a depiction of our idea submissions that were in community discussion versus hot status. And what that means is that when an idea is first submitted in community discussion, it is in first when they submit it, it's in community discussion. But as more people actually comment on it and like the idea, then it turns to a hot status, which is our community graduating the idea. Our threshold for community graduation for this particular campaign was 10 comments and 10 likes. So 12 of those 72 submissions reached a hot status. And we tend to say that this shows where the heat is. And 40% of those hot ideas fell within the flexibility category. Next slide. So let's get to some of the theme results here. So one of the really unique things that we did with this campaign for the first time was use our AI tool and our machine learning functionality on the campaign input, which was really exciting. What you're seeing here are the top themes identified by the AI tool. This slide has the 6th through 24th ranked themes identified by the AI tool. I'll show you the top 5 in just a moment. You may see some of them repeated, but the primary ones I wanted to highlight that came up again and again in frequency of instances identified by the tool was walk the environmental talk by reducing commuters to campus, feelings of increased efficiency and less stress, and discussion, quite a bit of discussion about reimbursements for office equipment. Next slide. So these are the top 5 themes identified by the AI tool, and the best example sentence to demonstrate that theme, and then the number of instances where the AI identified that theme. What I think is interesting here is that even though submitters were choosing flexibility and well-being as their submission category, the AI identified the following themes in the top 5. These included respect for working hours, more flexibility and options for how work is performed, commuting burden being lessened, productivity and accountability being unique to each employee, and a high level of employee satisfaction with remote work conditions. So this is all I have, but I just wanted to say that this presentation has been shared with the Return to Campus Committee. And if you have any questions about this particular campaign or Idea Wave in general, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. And I will now pass it over to my colleague, Angela Song.
Thanks, Mel. Okay, so I am going to now present some very, very high level results from the Reimagining the Workplace survey. As you all know, it was launched between April 12th and May 14th this year. And we've been receiving a lot of questions on this, and so we will begin distributing the VC level and unit level responses beginning tomorrow. We wanted to give you the preview today in this town hall. So you'll see here with the response rate, we had a really high response rate of over 6,300 invited campus staff. As a reminder, this is staff results right now. We have a separate data for health staff. 45% response rate. All VC areas were represented with at least 34% participation. And we found that percent of staff working remotely ranged anywhere from 58% to 100%. And as Nancy mentioned earlier, as a reminder, we had at least 10% of our staff who were on campus the entire time. Next slide, please. Okay, so what did we see? As those of you who did take the survey last year, this is the second year for the survey, and so we were able to see any differences or changes from last year to this year. And what we found, a really interesting finding, was that from last year to this year, there were statistically significant increases in satisfaction scores and how the university has handled the pandemic. So increase in scores from last year to this year on those high level related to feeling that UCSD cares about my well-being, communication at the UCSD level, things such as this, town halls, and the amazing work from campus communications to really continue to communicate about the crisis. It was definitely reflected in the survey results. We did find a decrease in satisfaction scores at the department level, but those were not statistically significant. And for those who do this type of work in terms of staff engagement, this is actually an interesting finding. You usually find that you have higher satisfaction rates at the department level and lower satisfaction rates as you go further out in your sphere of influence. So this was really a testament to the university level communication and response to the crisis. Next slide, please. So what did we find as the top benefits and challenges? So per your responses, and this probably will not be surprising to you all if you did take the survey, less time spent commuting was the top, followed by flexible work schedules, feeling that we are saving money, work-life balance, positive environmental impact, as Melanie mentioned, and feeling that there's increased productivity. So those are the positive aspects. The challenges, number one was ergonomic equipment or lack thereof, access to other office equipment, since most of us don't have a printer or a scanner or a copier at our homes, and reliable internet connection and Wi-Fi. Next slide, please. So what we found from the survey, the top three items that respondents indicated were either moderately or significantly impacting them. Number one was childcare and schooling for children K through 12. Followed by spouse or partner's employment. And at first we thought that maybe the spouse or partner's employment was perhaps that the spouse or partner was going back to work, but looking deeper into the verbatim comments since we first presented these results, we are finding that that concern is about the spouse or partner having lost their employment during the pandemic, and asking further comments, asking for university for provisions for employment services or healthcare for their unemployed spouses or partners. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So we found that 98% of those who are working remotely now prefer to work remotely full-time or occasionally. 98, it's actually almost 99%. Of course, we have that about 1%, the highly social extroverts maybe, who really do want to be back on site, bless them. And there are no differences in preferred future work location if you have family or not. And there are no differences in preferred future work location if you're a supervisor or not. Okay, next slide, please. And what are we looking forward to when we come back to campus? Number one, seeing friends, colleagues, and teammates. Second is opportunity to have team celebrations and gatherings, and then a sense of connection with campus community. So really, this is about wanting to connect with each other again. Next slide, please. So importantly, we also asked self-perceptions of, do we feel that we've been productive during this time? And also supervisors' perceptions of, do we feel our staff were productive during this time? So we're finding that 95% of respondents felt that their level of effectiveness was at least the same, moderately or extremely effective. And 86% of supervisors rated that their employees who were working remotely were operating at least the same as before the pandemic, or before we were all sent home, or moderately higher or significantly higher. Now, normally I would pause for a moment to let that sink in, but I know we're running out of time, so I'll move on. But this is a really important finding here in terms of level of productivity while everybody was working remotely. So next slide. And so also importantly, when you think about end to end now, so we have self-perception, we have supervisor's perception. What about the customer's experience? Did they find a lack of service during this time? In our findings, since we did also do our customer sat survey during the same time period, the answer is no. They found that the service was actually better. So service have improved during the pandemic. So at least the same or improved almost across the board. So in 2000, previously we had about 8% of those who are in the customer sat survey, and this is academic and faculty and staff who are responding to this survey. We had 8% who are scoring in the excellent range. In this last year, we had 11% who are scoring in the excellent range. That's a 4.29 out of 5.0 on a 5-point scale. And a sampling of 152 comments that mentioned the word pandemic during this time. 24% of those specifically called out the excellent services that the departments are providing during this time. Okay, and on the right, overall satisfaction means score. Also, we're finding that 64% of the departments that participated in this survey as compared to those who participated last year, it's almost the same number of departments, almost the exact same departments themselves, they also increased in their satisfaction mean scores. So really interesting and encouraging findings as well. Next slide, please. Okay, the next couple slides are just looking at group differences now with satisfaction with the pandemic. So you'll see here this groupings between represented by union, yes, no. Are you an hourly employee or exempt? Are you MSP level or professional series or people of color? So those are the categories. You'll see that the yellow cells indicate lower mean scores. And if it's blank, that means there were no statistically significant changes between. We will share these slides out later since we can't really take it all in right now. But the upshot of this slide is that groups that rated higher with their overall satisfaction, those who are not represented, they are exempt, they're at the MSP level, and they're white. Non-represented staff respondents rated higher in the following areas: breadth of communication, UCSD had effectively informed about health and safety policies, and that supervisors were supportive. Next slide, please. And then another really interesting finding, we're looking at group differences related to family care, yes, no, or gender, cis, male, female. And so we're finding that those who worked remotely during this past year, if you have family care responsibilities, you rated higher in level of effectiveness, ability to collaborate with coworkers, and having the tools to perform your jobs. Anecdotally, we may have thought that that would be lower, but we're finding statistically significant that those with family care responsibilities rated higher during this past year. And female respondents rated higher in their level of effectiveness, ability to collaborate well with coworkers, and have tools to perform job duties. That difference between male and female was also statistically significant. Thank you. Next slide. And this is the last slide. So we also asked just open-ended, also similar to what Melanie had presented in IdeaWave, but the most commonly cited suggestions from survey respondents to help make the transition easier: continue to allow flexible and or hybrid schedules, have a phased return as we are doing, just don't force people to come back all at once, and just really wanted to make sure that we have all the measures in place to be safe or safe return. Reducing parking costs. I know that Josh will be talking about parking coming up, and then others as well related to communication and making sure that the office space is fully cleaned. And let's continue to encourage vaccination. Thank you, Dr. Sosha, for that as well. And that is it for these slides. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Hallie.
All right, thanks so much, Angela and Melanie. So for our last updater today, it's something that I know a topic a lot of people are interested in. So I'd like to welcome Josh Kavanaugh, Executive Director of Transportation Services, to give us an update about parking and transportation. So Josh, take it away.
Well, thank goodness I'm on screen now and can rest my fingers because we've been lighting up the Q&A, and thank you for all of those great questions, gang. So we've got good news for you on the parking front. The transportation team has been very busy while we've all been Zooming, or many of us coming into campus every day. And for those of you who are returning, the parking and transportation system that you're returning to will have lots of those, good familiar options, but you're going to be accessing them in new ways and having a new experience that I think you're really going to like. So for starters, we heard you loud and clear that you needed flexible parking. This is already a trajectory we were on, but we just put the pedal to the metal when the pandemic hit. And we now offer the ability to pay for parking just for the days that you're going to be on campus through the Park mobile app. And starting next week, we're going to be transitioning to that to a way that you can pay for exactly the type of permit parking that you would normally want. So if you normally use an A permit or a B permit and you want that level of access after the summer when permits are no longer sort of universal as D can park in B right now, you're going to be able to purchase exactly the kind of permit that you want, including all those special variations. So if you were down at SIO and you use a B permit with an SIO decal historically, you're going to be able to buy a daily B plus SIO through the camp or the Park mobile app. Additionally, we know that some folks had concerns in the past. They would have these months where they would be on campus every single day, or a quarter where they'd be on campus every single day, and they were exceeding the limit on the number of scratcher permits that they could purchase. So there are no more limits on daily parking use. If you want to use daily parking and you're coming into campus every single day of the week, you are absolutely able to do that. And in fact, I encourage you to do so. If you want to make that transition, you will save money over the course of a year because you're not going to be paying for parking on the weekends. You're not going to be paying for parking on holidays. You're not going to be paying for parking when you go on vacation or when you get sick. And overall, over the course of a year, you're going to be better off. So now, the one hesitation that I've heard from folks about transitioning over to daily parking is, yeah, but I love my pre-tax payroll deduction. When are you going to give me those tax savings in the daily parking environment? It's coming, folks. Hang on. We've got the developers working feverishly. We will have a solution for you for that in time for fall quarter when the campus fully repopulates. And we're really excited to be able to deliver that. So the other thing that I've been hearing from folks is, hey, the pandemic has been a little tough on the pocketbook. Can you help us out on rates? And I wish I could bring big discounts. And if you were following the transcript or the Q&A, I should say, at least we've been able to do it on motorcycles and have been able to cut the motorcycle rate for folks coming back to campus in that mode. But for everyone else, I can say that for fall quarter, there are going to be no rate increases for the campus. For all of us commuters, no rate increases for the fall quarter. And that's something that I'm really excited to be able to do to at least ease the transition a little bit as folks are coming back. Now, I can't promise that that's going to stick around forever. We have taken on a lot of new debt associated with facility improvements for the campus. And that's another exciting new thing that you'll be coming back to, is a parking environment that looks really different than where you were. We've decided to really focus on cleanliness, on safety. And so we have added new capacity at North Torrey Pines Living and Learning Neighborhood, 1,200 new stalls approximately over there. That gives us a net 300 on the central campus, even in comparison to the loss of, or when you take into account the loss of parking for the Theater District Living Learning Neighborhood construction. In addition, we've got 500 newer restored parking spots over on the East Campus, and really excited to be bringing those to fruition. We've also been upgrading our parking facilities, again, clean and safe. So we've got new bright paint on all walls in the Gilman parking structure, repainted the parking Hopkins structure. We just finished putting in new lighting fixtures in Gilman with super bright LED lighting in there. So we're getting the environmental benefit in addition to a safer and more comfortable environment for folks. That same lighting fixture is coming in over at Hopkins shortly. Parking guidance is now live at the Gilman parking structure and will be available in the campus app shortly for real-time parking information. That also is coming to Hopkins. And oh, by the way, that same upgrade level that we've done at Gilman are doing at Hopkins will be going to the Campus Point West parking structure and the Athena parking structure in the coming fiscal year. So we've also got more real-time parking information in the campus app, and we're bringing modeled parking availability for every parking lot on campus to the app. If you go to our website, one of the things you'll always see in the rotator up on the top is ways that you can find parking faster. And that's where you can find our parking cheat sheet that you can print and keep in your glove box. But we said that that isn't good enough, that our quarterly parking model that tells you when various parking lots that don't have real-time information fill should be something that you should have access to in the app as well. And so we are putting that out there and available in the app. Now, I do want to acknowledge not everybody has a smartphone. And so that is not the only way to purchase parking. It's the fastest way. It's the easiest way. But daily parking at those same discounted rates that are only available to affiliates is available through the parking portal on the Transportation Services website. And so if you don't use a smartphone, or if you have an older smartphone that's not compatible with some of the apps these days, you can absolutely go through the website and do things that way. Next slide, please. So we provide parking for anyone who wants it. We recognize with the landform of California and the urban development form for California, canyons and cul-de-sacs, I call it. A lot of people need to drive, but for those who can, we hope you will share the ride. Whether it is carpool and vanpool, which are some of our cheapest and best resources for getting to campus, or on transit, we want to make sure that we support you in that as well. So, great news. Those of you who are coming back in September, you can ride fare free on MTS. Just download that Pronto app. You're going to ride fare free all the way through September. When October comes around, you're going to want to transition over to the EcoPass trial program with Transportation Services. And what we do there, Transportation Services will pay for your first quarter of EcoPass. And theoretically, you only get to do this once, but the reality is everybody who let their passes lapse or canceled them during the pandemic has been out of the program for more than a year. So guess what? You're requalified, and you're able to now have another free quarter of EcoPass. That second quarter, you're going to get a 62.5% discount, basically half of what I pay MTS. And then every quarter thereafter, we've negotiated a bulk rate with MTS where we get 25% off of retail, and you're going to get that in perpetuity. For those that are riding Coaster, I wish I could give the same deal. Coaster passes are just so much more expensive. So what I can give you is a 50% discount on your first quarter. So Transportation Services will go halvesies with you if you want to try out Coaster, and we'll do that for a quarter, after which you'll transition into the same rate that we pay the North County Transit District for that. There is zero markup on transit passes. We operate that program at a slight loss when you consider our overhead expense, but we do that as a service to you, our colleagues. So in addition, the Triton Commuter Club launched while many of you were away and Zooming from home, and it's great. It provides a carpool and vanpool matching program that's much more robust than what we had previously. You can access the preferred parking for carpools and van pools by logging your alternative commute trips or those work from home days. You're able to earn parking discounts and other incentives and rewards. Some of those include our monthly and quarterly prize drawings, and we've given away 3 e-bikes to members of the campus community since this program launched at the beginning of fall quarter. We're going to keep doing that. We have monthly prize pools. To date, they've included a lot of gift certificates from the UC San Diego bookstore, and thank you to them for their co-sponsorship of the program. And we've got a whole bunch of new stuff that we're going to get mixed in there for prizes and incentives come fall quarter. So something that's really great as we harmonized all of our commute incentive programs, we said, hey, guess what? Remote workers have been left out of this, and especially with hybrid work, we want to acknowledge their effort to reduce our environmental impact from commuting. MTS riders weren't eligible for incentives for a very, very long time now. We brought them back into the fold. And so now everybody who is coming to campus other than driving alone is able to earn incentives along the way. We provide emergency ride home support. We'll give you, if you want to bike or skate to or scoot to campus, we'll give you a $10 MIPS. That's the multi-directional impact protection system helmet. That's the very best for prevention of brain injuries. We'll give you a $10 MIPS helmet. That's unheard of. It's like 70% or something off of retail. And if the $10 is a burden, guess what? We'll make it free. We're here to help you choose a less impactful commute and to reward you for that. And so those of you who are going to bike or skate or take an active transportation form, join our Rider Rewards program. We'll give you a little helmet sticker that you can put on your helmet. And when you show it at the bookstore, at Sunshine Market, at a number of campus and community vendors, you're able to get great discounts. Next slide, please. So once you've arrived on campus, we're providing more safe and simple ways to circulate. And so we've got, as I mentioned in the chat and in the comments, we've got the trolley coming to campus November 21st, 2021. We finally have a hard date for it and couldn't be more excited about that. We will have the loop shuttle servicing the central campus station there at Pepper Canyon every 15 minutes in each direction. We're going to try to get it to every 10 minutes if I can get enough drivers, and we can keep the bus fleet in good condition. So additionally, we're extending the SIO shuttle. So we'll now have a connection to light rail through Gilman Transit Center for the SIO shuttle. We're trying to create slower, safer streets. And so you'll see that we've lowered the speed limit in many locations on campus. And I think that's the way of the future for the campus, that 20 miles an hour will soon be the norm on campus. We've started with key corridors, but I expect that to expand as we see more and more active transportation, biking and walking on the campus. By the time you come back for fall quarter, we will have launched 3 miles of new on-street protected bikeways. And in fact, I just had a planning exercise that is turning into an engineering exercise where we hope to raise the ante on that to 5 miles of new on-street protected bikeways prior to the opening of light rail, if not prior to the beginning of fall quarter. So we've been continuing with the Ridge Walk improvements, and my thanks to our colleagues in the capital program and FM for the support on that. And then we're introducing new wayfinding tools, not only in the app environment, but digital interactive kiosks coming to campus prior to the launch of light rail. And our new waypoints program that will provide interpretive elements throughout the campus at more than 200 points. But there, let's kick it back to you, Hallie, and onto the Q&A.
All right, Josh, thanks so much for all that information. So to all our guests, as you can tell, we had a lot of information to share this month between our survey results, return to campus updates, parking and transportation. We do try to be mindful of going through your questions and making sure our updates are answering the questions that are coming in. So we've got about 10 minutes left to take questions. So I'd like to invite all the panelists back on screen, and we'll answer some questions live as a panel. And I also want to call all of our attendees attention to the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. I encourage you do a scroll through that, you'll probably see a question that you might have had be answered. So let's get started with taking some questions. And all right, I'm going to send this first one to a panelist who did not present. So Pierre, this question is for you. Pierre is our Vice Chancellor and Chief Financial Officer. So let's see, Pierre, will staff required to return to campus full-time be provided a stipend to support mileage and parking? And now I'm looking and I see that I wonder if Pierre may have stepped away. And I think he did. So let's move on to another question. So Angela, a question that has come up, and you touched on it, but it seems important, it's coming up a lot with staff, is basically the question of a second vaccine. So let me just read this question the way the participants submitted it. If I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, should I worry about the Delta variant? Can I get a Pfizer Moderna vaccine if I already got Johnson & Johnson? So what do you think?
So right now, the recommendation is not to go and immediately get a Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. That recommendation might change over the next month or two. We're watching it very closely, and the scientific community is having an active discussion about that. So right now, recommendation is not to get Pfizer or Moderna. Sit tight where you're at. I think, you can be, the Delta does create some concern. I would encourage folks, if you're apprehensive, if you live with someone who's vulnerable, is unvaccinated, mask more, mask indoor spaces, minimize your exposure in other areas. Do those other protective measures we did before when we didn't have vaccination. Just rely on those basic safety measures. That'll help a whole lot.
All right, great. So basic safety measures, and stay tuned for more information to come, and we'll provide updates as they become available. All right, so next question is to another one of our panelists who did not give an update, so I'd like to introduce him. So this is Steve Jackson. He's Associate Vice Chancellor of Resource Management and Planning. So Steve, we got a couple questions related to the status of buildings. So this attendee says, when will the campus be open to the public and buildings unlocked?
Thanks, Hallie. So that's a great question, and it actually was discussed today at the Campus Operations Group meeting. And right now it's being pushed back to the department chairs for discussions that my understanding will be taking place within the next days and weeks. And direction will be coming out following those discussions on the level of public access that will be made available for both students and non-affiliates to the campus. But great question. Thank you, Hallie.
Thanks, Steve. All right, Josh, as you probably saw, lots of questions coming your way about parking and transportation. So here are just a couple more that have come in. What are the last mile plans for trolley users for those who work far from the stations, such as Torrey Pines Center North and Torrey Pines Center South? And then we'll answer that, and then I'll throw another one your way.
Fantastic question, Hallie. And so both Torrey Pines Center South and North are going to have a connection to the Loop shuttle available to them at 7th College, at Scholars and North Point Driveway. And so that's going to be the best solution for them. And again, a shuttle heading each direction on the Loop every 15 minutes at the minimum. Our goal is to get to at least every 10 as soon as we have the staffing available to support that.
Very good. All right, another question for you, Josh. What are the hours for the shuttles/golf carts for those with disabilities?
Yeah, I'm really proud of this one and of the Triton Transit team. There was an acknowledgement about a year ago that we just weren't doing everything that we could or should be doing for the folks with limited mobility on campus, and that we should be running ADA carts whenever we were running transportation for other individuals on campus. So we now run ADA cart service from 6:30 in the morning until midnight during the regular academic year on weekdays, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekends.
Great. Thank you very much, Josh. Okay, Pierre, on the topic of parking and transportation, it's something folks want to know about. Here's a question for you. Will staff required to return to campus full-time be provided a stipend to support mileage and parking?
The answer is no. Sorry. Listen, we need to remember where we are before the pandemic as well. I think that's a better reference point for everyone. So for some of us, we'll be able to have hybrid options. And there are clearly kind of pros and cons to working from home and working from the office. if you work from home, you have to deal with logistics and family care. And if you work from the office, so you have to deal with commutes and additional cost again. So it's half a dozen of one and six of the other. And I think the question for everybody will be, what's working for my unit and what's working for me? And I have these conversations, but no, they will not be kind of subsidies for those who come to the campus, whether it's all the time or part-time.
All right, thanks, Peter. Okay, so this question, probably either Terry or Nancy. So this person wants to know, what is HR's idea of the future workplace as it relates to flexible hybrid work arrangements? And a follow-up to that is, how is HR relaying that information to managers?
I can start, and then I think Terry can add as well, and augment the response that I have. So what is HR's vision and how are we relaying this to managers? And what was the other part of the question, Hallie?
Yeah, so what is HR's vision as it relates to flexible hybrid work arrangements?
Yeah. I think, HR, along with other key stakeholders from our institution, has been engaged in a very thoughtful process of kind of looking at a variety of things. What is our core, mission? How do we serve our core mission at UC San Diego? How do we be intentional about fostering a workplace where employees thrive? How do we look at ways that we've learned lessons from the pandemic and from the move for many to fully remote work? How do we have a vibrant community on our campus where we support our residential campus and our commitment to in-person education, research, and patient care? So there's a confluence of all these things that are of great importance, and what we have done and what's been reflected, elsewhere, and including in today's staff town hall, is we're looking at a plan where we have vice chancellors over their operations will be making decisions that best meet the needs of their very different types of work and types of operations and types of service delivery. And we want to support that through a shared framework of being, looking at workplace operational flexibility consistent with our operational needs, coming through a lens of what are our operational needs. And those needs are going to be local. And also, we're looking at a continuous learning process. I mean, we are an institution committed to learning. So part of what we're going to do is we're going to move forward. We will then learn from the experiences that we have in units and collectively across the institution. We will likely readjust, and we will continue to move forward in a way that is dynamic and that's reflective of our culture and our commitment to innovation and success. And HR is playing a big role in a variety of ways. Some of that includes looking at supporting the decisions that are being made, supporting training that is very necessary, supporting a framework that is necessary in communications, and in a variety of ways, because really we look in human resources at how can we support the people and culture of our institution. And this is a time when that mission and that purpose of human resources is perhaps more important than ever before.
So what I would add to that, Hallie, and I think it's a really good question that people are asking. The easiest way to describe it is the world has changed. And so we're paying attention to those changes, and our responsibility in HR is to make sure that our leaders, our senior leaders, our managers, our supervisors are very well aware of where the world is going. They are responsible for making the decisions for their operational areas to meet their operational needs, but we are providing them all of the information, advice, and guidance on where the world is going and what they need to be aware of, in order to be able to communicate with their employees about what they're doing and why they're making the decisions they're making. The questions about how the supervisors and managers are getting this information directly So we're having, we talked about those trainings, and we're having some really robust discussions in those manager and supervisor trainings. We're having bi-weekly office hours where we're talking to managers and supervisors about the struggles and challenges and questions and how do I say what to whom and however, and we're walking them through it. But the biggest thing is give some grace in this process. It won't be perfect. We're going to figure it out together. We'll make changes along the way. It's iterative, and we're going to do the best that we can to meet where we are going in the future and to meet our operational needs, because that is key and paramount for what we are absolutely doing every day.
All right, thank you, Terry. So for our last question today, we've come to the end of our program. I'm going to send one more question to Pierre. I think this is a really good one. So Pierre, what can you share about UC San Diego's Adoption Assistance Program effective July 1, 2021, which is tomorrow or the day after?
Sorry, which one? The adoption?
Yes, the Adoption Assistance Program, and I'll say maybe also the other program that accompanies it. Maybe just share a few details about those.
You mean the family
Yes.
care program? So I'm very excited by the launch because I was on the task force. I think it's bringing us more in line with other employers. I did not refresh myself on the details though, so I'm desperately looking for my HR colleagues to step in and answer the questions so that I don't give you any wrong information here.
Sure, I am looking up the campus notice that we shared. So I think that question was actually submitted just before we shared the information about that. So if you can check the chat now, and I'll throw this in for everybody. Here is the campus notice that has information about our new family programs, and that's a pay for family care and bonding program and an adoption assistance program. And it's just a really great way that the UC is supporting families. And these are new programs that go into effect tomorrow, July 1st. Which would be 2 days from now. So check out that link in the chat. And with that, we'll wrap up this week. We had a ton of information about all sorts of different topics to cover, and we got through a lot of it, both on screen and through our Q&A box in the chat. So thank you to all our panelists. A big thank you to everybody who took the time to join us today, and we will see you next month at our staff town hall, and you can find the registration information and date for that on the Return to Learn website. So thanks a bunch, and we'll see you next month.